An electron starts from rest in a cathode ray tube. So we're assuming it starts where it's boiled off at the filament, right here. There's my initial location of my electron. And then as it gets attracted towards those positive plates there, it's going to leave, that little electron is going to leave with some sort of kinetic energy. It's going to get accelerated across that gap. So ultimately, this is going to be a conservation of energy question, where the electron's initial potential energy, while it's being sort of held in place at that location at the beginning, we'll call that location A, is all going to get converted to kinetic energy at location B. Now we need to figure this part out. Well, we know from our formula sheet that change in potential energy is Q times change in voltage. Charge of an electron is negative 1.6 times 10 to the negative 19 coulombs. And our change in voltage is 200 volts. So we get a change in potential of negative 3.2 times 10 to the negative 17 joules. But remember, change in voltage is always final potential minus initial potential. And since your final potential is 0, I get negative EP initial equals negative 3.2 times 10 to the negative 17. In other words, my initial potential energy is positive 3.2 times 10 to the negative 17 joules. Now, the reality is you can just cut to the chase and figure out your initial potential energy by going Q times V, and don't worry about the sign. But I'm showing you why it ends up being why it ends up being positive. So now we go back and we complete the question. I'll do it in blue. So using our conservation of energy, we have my initial potential energy, which we just calculated, all gets converted into kinetic. And my initial potential energy was calculated to be 3.2 times 10 to the negative 17 joules. And kinetic energy is 1/2 mass times V squared, V final in this case. So if we multiply both sides by 2 and then divide by the mass of an electron, I get V final squared is 2 times 3.2 times 10 to the negative 17, all over the mass of an electron, 9.11 times 10 to the negative 31st. And then when I take a square root of both sides, I get my final velocity of 5.9 times 10 to the 6th meters per second.